Hey everyone, it's Debra Poneman, founder of Yes to Success, where we share knowledge and tools for you to live your ultimate life. Ageless, anti-aging for your brain, your body, and your future, and the Awake Method. Because guess what? It's time for all of us to become awake. And today I want to talk to you about freedom. I've shared a version of this Success Saturday before, but I thought it was time to bring it up again since there has been a lot of talk lately about um, losing our hard earned freedoms. And there are a lot of differing opinions about what freedom means. Do we have freedom to decide what we want to do with our own bodies? How about the right to bear arms and what kind of arms? And what's going to happen around freedom to peacefully assemble and around freedom of speech? Is freedom to speak our truth? Is that a right that we have without fear of repercussions? Is freedom the right to live in a democracy, in a country where the rights of all people are honored and freedom is not denied to some for their personal life choices or dictated by a few? Well, I've been pondering these questions and the question of a different kind of freedom, or actually the basis to outer freedom, which is inner freedom. When most people think of the great Austrian psychiatrist and psychotherapist Viktor Frankl, they don't usually think of the genius who developed the psychological approach known as logotherapy. Instead, well, justifiably, they think of the Holocaust survivor who gave new meaning to the word freedom. In Frankl's classic book, Man's Search for Meaning, he famously said, when we are no longer able to change a situation, we are challenged to change ourselves. What I believe that Frankl was saying was that simply each of us has total freedom because freedom is not something dictated by our outer circumstances, but rather determined by our inner state. I mean, if Frankl could experience freedom in a concentration camp where the absolute worst of human depravity was inflicted on the prisoners, can we not experience it when we feel trapped in a job or a relationship or a life circumstance or a political reality? And are we simply prisoners of our own making? If we learn nothing else from Viktor Frankl, it's that freedom is a choice we must make at every moment. And there always is a choice. So let's look at some things we might be able to do in our own lives to achieve the type of freedom that seems unattainable by us mere mortals. First, have a purpose greater than yourselves. One of the observations Frankl made was that the prisoners who survived the camps had a purpose that inspired them to keep going no matter what, a responsibility to something greater than themselves. For example, for some, it was a child who they managed to send off to a country where the child would be safe, or a spouse they believed would be waiting for them once they were liberated. For others, it was an unfinished book or a piece of art or a scientific work they had begun. They knew their contribution would make the planet a better place, and they needed to complete it before they died. Those who held a vision of what they wanted to create in the world, even if it just lived in their hearts, were often the ones who made it out alive. The vision gave them the courage to live and a sense of inner freedom. In his teachings, Frankl often refers to the words of Nietzsche, who said, "He who knows the why for his existence will be able to bear almost any how." Next, do what I call sharing your bananas. In my life, I've often worked and played amongst the wealthy and successful. I mean, like I'm not best friends with Warren Buffett, although I did once go on a private safari with Richard Branson and his extended family. But I do have to say that the majority of my associates statistically are in the top 5% of the world's wealthiest and most successful individuals. But are they the most free? Although I hesitate to be the judge of how free they consider themselves to be, I'd say that some of the people I've grown to know and love who live in aluminum huts in Haiti are far more free. Why? Well, I believe the answer is illustrated in something Marianne Williamson once said to me. I had just returned home from India, and I was telling her about my visit to a community of people who lived under tarps in a junkyard, but seemed so happy, and how it was just so inconceivable to me. And she shared the words of a famous anthropologist. I don't remember the anthropologist's name, but the person said, the reason these people who have so little are so happy is that if they have two bananas, they will always give one away. The reason so many people in this country of plenty are so miserable is that they have all the bananas they want, but they have no interest in sharing them. Frankl saw men who had everything taken away from them, including their families, their homes, their livelihoods, their possessions, even their names that became numbers tattooed on their arms. But they never lost their freedom to share their bananas. Frankl said this, and I have a quote. He said, "We who lived in the camps can remember the men who walked through the huts, comforting others, giving away their last piece of bread. They may have been few in number, but they offered sufficient proof that everything can be taken from a man but one thing, the last of the human freedoms, to choose one's attitude in any given set of circumstances, to choose one's own way." Frankl even recounts a time when a guard, at great risk to himself, secretly gave him a piece of bread, and Frankl said it was far more than the small piece of bread that moved me to tears at the time. It was the human something that this man gave to me, the word and the look which accompanied the gift. Next, be a decent human being. Yet, even though there were those who shared their figurative bananas, Frankl also told the story of the senior warden who was a prisoner himself, but who beat other prisoners at even the tiniest indiscretion, leading Frankl to conclude, and it's a quote, "The mere knowledge that a man was either a camp guard or a prisoner tells us almost nothing. Human kindness can be found in all groups, even those which as a whole it would be easy to condemn." Frankl speculates that there are really only two types of people: decent human beings and indecent human beings, and both can be found everywhere. They exist in every group and every level of society. I look at them as free human beings and captive human beings. Those who are bound by hate and the need to be superior are not free. Those who can find a way to love and be decent human beings, even in the most unbearable circumstances, are free. I remember in 1968 when my brother was accepted at Harvard, it was a very big deal. My father never finished high school, and although my mother was valedictorian of her high school class, she never had the opportunity to go to college. Her mother had died, and she had to go to work to help support the family. But I remember my mother, when her friends were saying to her, "Oh, you must be so proud of Larry going to Harvard," her reply was always the same. She would say some rendition of course, I'm very proud of Larry, but the most important thing to me and Harold are that he and Debbie are decent human beings." And that is the type of freedom that each of us has the opportunity to experience every day of our lives, to be decent human beings. And Frankl, in his book, Man's Search for Meaning, eventually concludes that there is no final answer to the question, what is the true meaning of life? He says that we all need to answer that question for ourselves. But he does say that life essentially tests us at every moment, and the answer is revealed in how we respond. He says that freedom is not found on some mountaintop, but is found daily and hourly in the choices we make. And finally, Frankl says about the meaning of life, we had to learn ourselves, and furthermore, we had to teach the despairing men that it did not really matter what we expected from life, but rather what life expected from us. So that's something to ponder, especially at this time. What does life expect from us? I'll see you next week. Bye for now.